Most businesses only focus on growing and expanding, and they give little to no attention to their exit strategies until after exit is staring them in the face. Learn here at Boosting Business Value, brought to you by Blue Sky Business Resources. You'll discover how to shape a more durable and saleable business, and how to implement a powerful, well-planned, and rewarding exit. Join Dr. David Gruder and Jason Tazinkowicz as they deliver actionable tips for lower middle market company owners, executives, and their trusted advisors. Find out where your business currently stands, how you can meet your revenue objectives more reliably, and how to grow your venture to the next level, all with a smooth and fruitful exit in mind. Here are your hosts, Dr. David and Jason.
All right. Welcome to our 14th episode of Boosting Business Value. In this episode, we're going to be talking about highlighting the CEPA certification, Certified Exit Planning Advisory Certification, the Exit Planning Summit, and the Exit Is Now podcast. We are very excited to have a special guest, Scott Snider, with us. So, David, why don't you just kick us off, please?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And I agree. This is going to be an episode very much worth listening to all the way through, as though our other episodes aren't. And for those of you who are new to this Boosting Business Value podcast, I'm Dr. David Gruder, the business lifecycle, exit planning, and post-acquisition psychologist for Blue Sky Business Resources. And with me is co-host Jason Tazinkowicz, Blue Sky's Chief Operating Officer and all-around fix-it guy and systems guy. And Jason, go ahead and introduce our wonderful guest for this episode, Scott Snider.
So yeah, as we mentioned, we have Scott with us. He's the president of the Exit Planning Institute. And I will tell you that when I got my CEPA, he was one of my teachers. Him and the rest of the team gave me a great education, a great foundation in the work that we do at Blue Sky with exit planning. And so we thought it'd be helpful for all of you to get to know Scott, learn a little bit more about what he and his organization do, and gain a better understanding about the depth and the nuance that goes into real exit planning and successful transitions for business owners and their businesses. So Scott, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys, for having me on. So yeah, maybe you guys could all probably read the formal bio on the websites, and you could follow us on LinkedIn and all that good stuff. So rather, I'd say let's maybe talk about why we're passionate about what we do in the business owner and exit planning space. So for me, maybe a little bit of interesting of a story. I'm kind of a lifelong, if you will, entrepreneur. Started my first business at the seat in my geometry class when I was 16 in high school. Had actually kind of flourished and became something real. And I was able to sell that company by the age of 24. So my first exit. Now, certainly a young man, if you guys can remember, right, everybody even listening, right, when you're 24, even though you're certainly out of college and everything, like, what do you really kind of know? You're still kind of just starting your adult life. But it was really my first big exit planning lesson. And that lesson really comes from a personal standpoint. And Jason, if you remember, right, I think really one of the things that makes CEPAs different is we believe in a holistic plan, the alignment or the blend of business, personal, and financial goals or elements. And although I think that certainly for a 24-year-old guy, I had a pretty sound financial plan, had a pretty successful business exit, what I found myself doing at 24 is kind of wandering the earth, trying to figure out who I was. Because since I was 16, I was this entrepreneur that owned a landscape construction company that went to school for horticulture. So I was all in. And now at 24, I find myself saying, well, I kind of let my business define who I was. Now, saying all of that, right, what's interesting is that my dad was and is a certified exit planning advisor, right? So I always kind of bust his chops a little bit because I was like, Dad, where were you when it came to the personal planning as a CEPA? And I think that it actually was quite an interesting journey after that. As I wandered, I fell into love with understanding different business owners' companies while helping my dad and his business partner, Andy, at the time, build their consulting practice as certified exit planning advisors. And what we quickly, I think, realized is that if you rewind 12 years or so, I guess that was, the exit planning space was very conceptual. Like, I think that EPI of old taught a lot of great philosophies and concepts. And what, frankly, people like Jason were sitting there saying was, well, how do I go out and implement this now that I've learned it? Well, maybe unlike Jason came through a program where now we have the value acceleration methodology, something that my dad created that we saw back in this consulting company. And I challenged my dad to flip the script. I said, I think really, as an exited owner myself, right, I think really what was lacking was a holistic minded team of advisors that really represented all of the owner and who they were as a person, as a business owner, as a manager, as a visionary, from a personal financial strategy, as somebody that doesn't have a business. It's kind of a holistic approach. So 2012, we buy the Exit Planning Institute, implement the value acceleration methodology, and here we are today. So we have a kind of an interesting family business between me and Dad. Dad has this interesting kind of mix, Jason, that you kind of saw at the SEPA program where he came out of big corporate down to lower middle market, down to small family business before he started his own consulting firm. That's mixed with being an entrepreneur, certainly as well, and then mixed with my kind of perhaps stereotypical entrepreneur where my mind is probably going, as we talk today, you'll probably see me wander out to the side here because you guys are just giving me ideas. So it's been a great ride. And honestly, I couldn't be prouder of what folks like Jason are doing in our marketplace today, really helping owners understand that though they have something successful today, that doesn't mean that they have something of significance, something that's transferable, ready, valuable, that's aligned to their business, personal, and financial goals. And I could get down a whole rabbit hole here, guys, but I could tell you that I'm certainly passionate about the work that we do, both short term with the baby boomers more immediately exiting and more long term with the next generation of owners, people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, that if we're doing our job right as certified exit planning advisors, we could teach owners a whole new way to have kind of a blended and balanced life and have a really awesome company as well. So that's what we're passionate about here.
Well, I love what you're saying about a holistic, integrated approach to exit planning and about how you drew a distinction between success and significance.
Sure.
And of course, it's possible to have both. And yet there are, as all three of us know, and as a lot of our viewers know, there are many entrepreneurs who have been successful and struggle with their success not having felt like it added significance to their lives. And then there are other entrepreneurs who are struggling financially in terms of success, even though what they're doing feels like it has significance for them. So I appreciate you bringing up the distinction between success and significance. And I think we can do a deeper dive into that because my first question to you is about unpacking the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of exit planning that you talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we always get this question. I think it's quite interesting. And if you had me and my dad side by side, I think Dad would always say that, well, value acceleration methodology is simple. And I always say, Dad, it's simple once you know it. Once you have, again, a guy like Jason teaching you it and coming into your life as an owner, these 90-day sprints, this concept of balance, like that's the stuff that we all hear, guys. What's hard about it is almost, I guess, it is unlearning what you've learned as a business owner. So in order to make this methodology, I guess I would say less complex, we came up with this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I think in the most simplest maybe form, it's probably just identified as that. So when you think about what it means, again, to exit a company, have high value, but also have a balanced personal and personal financial life, it really comes down to these 5 things. 1, there's the 5 stages of value maturity. You can think about that as a simple staircase. The ultimate goal, I think, for any owners is at the top of the staircase. At the top of the staircase is manage value. It is our life work. We've harvested it. We have it. We give it to a financial advisor to manage. We're buying new businesses. We're investing in the market. We're paying for our sons and daughters' weddings, whatever that might be for you. We're managing that value. But in order to get to that ultimate goal, you have to start way at the bottom. And you have to identify what you have today. In order to even get up there, you have to identify this kind of roadmap, this strategy to actually get to harvest. Everything in between, right, is we have to protect value, build value, we eventually harvest value. So that's the 5. The 4 is where I think most business owners are most interested because I think it's where we spend as owners most of our time. The 4 is the 4 intangible capitals. It's customer capital, social capital, human capital, and structural capital. These 4 intangible capitals that drive nearly 80% of a company's value. And if you think about these 4 C's, if you will, I think intuitively, naturally, this is how owners operate their company, especially if you get in the small market. Owners come into their warehouses, their storefronts, their offices, whatever it might be. They care about their customer. They want more profitable revenue. They're likely the heartbeat, perhaps, of their cultures. They want to retain and grow great people, and they want them to operate in a very efficient way, structural capital. So when you start to talk about these 4 C's, these are the natural things that owners do every day. But for guys like us, what we're advising owners to do is make them more intentional and very deliberate to create this company of more significance. So the 3 for me, we could debate that it's 3 by 3. We could debate that's 3 by 2. I think the big 3 that we need to know for our audience today in kind of a valuation sense is there's 3 gaps that any owner has. I don't care if you're 20 years old just starting out or 70-year-old just more immediately trying to harvest and move into the next phase of life. You have 3 gaps. You have a wealth gap, you have a profit gap, and you have a value gap. I think this is critical to understand for many business owners because I think many owners think that exit planning starts with the business because it's our largest asset. It's where all the value is. But for me, exit planning really starts with a wealth gap conversation because we need to understand who we are outside of the business and where we want to go. Before we came live on the podcast, we were talking about, I live in a small century home on the west side of Cleveland, a little kind of farm town, train town kind of thing. And I like that lifestyle. I got the motor coach, right? The RV. Me and my family go do that. And that's pretty much good enough for us. We like travel. We like experiences. But if you look at my dad's book, Walking to Destiny, he studies this company that he calls The Perfect Exit. That guy, his name is Andy Rayburn. Andy sold his business and his dream was to own a minor league baseball team. So that guy needs a hell of a lot more money than I do in my next phase of your life. And it's not bad or good. It just is, right? Whatever you're passionate about. So when you think about this wealth gap, maybe Andy's wealth gap is going to be a lot bigger than my wealth gap. Regardless, both of us have them. Then it becomes, well, how do I fill that wealth gap? That wealth gap is filled by the business value of my largest asset. Well, then the question becomes, well, what is my business worth? Is it worth the gap? Well, then we get to the profit gap and the value gap. So I say the 3 for any owner to know is the 3 gaps. The next is also critical. It's the 2 concurrent paths. I describe it as, I think time and time again, as an owner myself, I hear advisors tell me, Scott, you need to be more visionary and more strategic. You need to stop working in the business. You need to start working on the business. What we don't hear a lot, and maybe because it's kind of silly or corny to say, is that, Scott, you got to stop living in your life and work on your life. So every owner has 2 concurrent paths. They have a personal path that embraces their personal financial stuff, and they have a business path that obviously is their business. And the last one is value. The number one goal in the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is value. And it's not just business value, but it's driving value across all 3 elements, the 3 legs of the stool. This business, personal, and financial goals. And I think if you hear me talk about that, for any listener that certainly is a business owner, I think that kind of resonates. It makes this more complex methodology and process a little bit simpler, I hope, for us to understand.
Yeah, I like it. And that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 sequence is easy to remember. And so once you have that mnemonic device to help you remember, then it becomes easier to go back and fill in the blanks. So I love that. And one of the things that you brought up a couple times that I just want to highlight because I think it's brilliant is the idea of a balanced business giving you the freedom for a lifestyle. We have this cliche about lifestyle businesses, but what a lifestyle business is in the current nomenclature is a business that you're working in, you're getting just enough money to provide your lifestyle and you're not growing at all. Those are not really valuable businesses, but a business that provides you a lifestyle not only allows you the quality of life and the cash flow you need now, but it's growing, it's perpetual, it's durable. And so it also has value. And so I like that idea of changing the nomenclature from lifestyle business to balanced business that allows you a lifestyle. And so I think that that's something that leads really well into this value acceleration methodology that you've talked about.
Sure.
And how do you go from a lifestyle business to a business that has value?
So you take that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, where kind of David started our conversation, right? Is like these conceptual things. If you're sitting here and you bought into the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, your next logical question has to be, well, how the hell do I implement that? That all sounds good, but how do I make it happen? Well, you make it happen through the value acceleration methodology, which is just a process, an approach to making these things come alive. And I think, Jason, to your point about lifestyle versus what I would say, I guess, is a value creation kind of business, is that, yes, we're basically, the difference is simple. We have a decentralized business owner. So I don't have to show up every single day to my business because it relies on me. It relies on me from a strategic and visionary standpoint. It relies on me from an operational standpoint and fulfillment standpoint. The most valuable businesses are the ones that are decentralized from the owner. So if you get like all the way up to this ultimate goal as an owner, I think for a lot of us, of course, we want to roll up our sleeves and do the trade that, or the service or the vision, the invention that we had. But I think a lot of business owners are mentors and coaches and visionaries. They don't want to be tied down to fulfillment of a product. They want to be open every day to say, look, I could pivot over here and do this podcast today. Before I jumped on the podcast, I was having lunch with a couple of the people here at EPI that I haven't got to hang out with in a long time and needed some support. In the morning, I was working with some of the VIP people at the Exit Planning Summit that are coming to immerse themselves in this experience. And for me, we've decentralized our own business, EPI. First, we've decentralized it away from Chris Snider, my dad, the kind of the creator of the methodology. And now this year, and for the next 3, we're trying to decentralize it away from me. A lot easier said than done, gentlemen. But nonetheless, I think that's the key difference between this lifestyle company where I have to show up for the grind every day and this company that can run and operate and profit and grow value without me around. And I think better yet, the employees here at EPI aren't tied to Chris and Scott Snider. Jason, they're tied to guys like you. They're tied to the providing for the certified exit planning advisor because they're tied to the overall mission. They're passionate about it. They're tied to each other as a team and a unit that's growing a business. They're passionate about the core values. And so when you start to build this thing, it's much more than a lifestyle. It's kind of a very purposeful approach.
That's beautiful. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to give you a quick second. Tell us about, we've been so honored and privileged to have you talk about EPI on our podcast, but tell us about the EPI podcast.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Give us a quick pitch on that one.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So our podcast is called Exit is Now. So it's available on all the podcast platforms. We're new to it, though, I would say. A lot of people say I have a radio voice, so maybe you guys are hearing it right now. I don't know. It sounds pretty normal to me. But nonetheless, I did college radio, guys. When I was in my first year of college, I got certified to be a radio DJ. I had a show called Good Morning Rock every Saturday from 8 to 12. And my name there wasn't Scott Snider. It was the Duke. It was a nickname that my grandfather had in the Navy when he was there in World War II. Nonetheless, I've always wanted to get back into radio. So we started this podcast, and we started this podcast to frankly maybe complement other podcasts that are like it, like yours, and bring in, I guess, what I'd like to think, guys, is a very authentic look into my own life as a business owner. So when folks say, okay, I understand this value acceleration methodology, I understand this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 stuff, but give me a case study, give me an example. And I'd like to think that at least our certified exit planning advisors can say, well, look to our own owners, look to Chris and Scott Snider. Not only do they have a business, but they have a family business, adds another level of complexity, perhaps. And the Exit is Now podcast, at least in this first year, is all about people and people, process, approaches, authors that have really changed and shaped my life as a business owner and as somebody that, frankly, guys, has known no other way than running a company other than value acceleration, right? I have the benefit of having a dad who created the methodology. But I wanted to showcase that in our own podcast, saying this is how it is done. Like, it's not easy. It's not all beautiful. It's not as perhaps even as clean as we're all talking about it today on this podcast. But here's a real look and the challenges and at the perks of running a company that's thriving to be a significant one, not just a successful one.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's a fun podcast. For those of you listening that are looking for more podcasts to put onto your rotation, I highly recommend it. And we will have a link to it on the transcript.
Cool.
Yeah. Awesome. So a couple of things that I want to unpack and pursue further. First of all, interesting overlap between us. I also had a radio show in college.
Yeah. Cool. Do you play music? You have a talk show? What kind of stuff did you do?
Well, actually, there were two. One was that I had a commentary. I did a kind of an editorial commentary thing.
Very cool.
And the other was that I hosted actually a classical music show on,
Very cool.
On the radio station.
Very cool.
And because part of my background, well, you don't know, but part of my background is in music and performing and directing and conducting, things like that.
Yeah.
And not just with classical, but with jazz and with Broadway show
Talk about things we need to unpack, right, Jason? You probably know more about this than me. We're going to have a whole nother podcast talking about this. I love that.
Yeah, awesome. What I want to have you unpack a little bit further has to do with what creates wealth gaps. So just as a lead off for that, what I see is that wealth gaps are created because business owners are so over-identified, their sense of self is so over-identified with the business that they haven't taken sufficient time to get clear about what their ideal calendar, lifestyle, and legacy significance is meant to be for them. And without understanding what their ideal calendar, lifestyle, and legacy is, they have no way of computing what type of wealth they need to generate in order to live their ideal calendar, lifestyle, and legacy. Do you want to riff on that? And,
yeah, sure. I mean, you're spot on, right? I think that the first things first, I think many business owners don't even understand how much income they take out of their business. They live a pretty nice lifestyle. If they have a good business, even a large, lower middle market business, they might not have to worry about income as much, right? They have a very steady, predictable company. So they don't really understand how much money is taken out of their business. But without the business, talk about lifestyle companies, right? Without the business, how do I survive? Last year at our exit planning summit, I did what's called a power session. It's kind of like a TED talk. And I did it all around my journey towards finding personal purpose. And what I found in my research, and I'm sure, David, you could probably appreciate deep research, that 72% of Americans said that they had no sense of meaning or purpose in their life. So think about that. Like, no wonder owners don't plan personally. They don't understand, to your point, they just identify with the business. That's who they are. That's who I was at 24. And then you leave it and you're like, well, who am I? And what I came to find is that I'm a family man. I'm an avid soccer fan and player. I like challenges. I like learning. I like traveling, right? All this cool stuff. But when somebody identifies so much with their business, then they go to sell it. It's kind of a shock, and it creates obviously this wide gap. And I'll tell you, Dave, you probably appreciate the story. One of our certified exit planning advisors came through the program and said, Scott, he was a financial advisor. He goes, Scott, I need you to talk to one of my clients. I got this client after he exited, and he came into like $30 million, and he's struggling right now because he's kind of lost his identity. And funny story. So I talked to him at 9 a.m. on a Monday. 10 a.m. for me is like a big time at EPI. We have a company-wide big hour-long meeting, right? We talk about challenges. We award people for the cool stuff that they're doing. We talk through metrics, all the stuff. And I'm always pretty jacked on a Monday morning. And I talked to this guy at 9 a.m. and he says just that. He's like, Scott, man, you're pretty amped up for a Monday morning, man. And I was like, yeah, I told him the story I just told you guys. And he's like, you want to know what I'm doing right now? I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, I'm sitting in my basement right now, shooting pool, playing billiards by myself in my boxer shorts. He goes, look, I'm 54. I'm divorced. I have 2 kids, but they're out of the house. I have nothing to do. My phone doesn't ring. My email box doesn't fill up. I have no sales calls. I have no operational needs. I don't know what's going on. And so I think that big wealth gap in the early phases, while that gentleman was frankly still a business owner, that gap is created because they have no idea what they want to do in the next act or phases of their life. And this gentleman, I think, was 52 or 54 years old. He's got a long runway still, right? Like, there's a lot of stuff this guy can do in life. Mm-hmm. And not only the kind of psychological and personal, the kind of more personal effects, but the pure financial, the personal financial aspects of that are huge. They have no idea because they just never even thought about having a life without their baby around, right?
Absolutely. And I've seen firsthand the devastating fallout of that starting in the late 1980s, early 1990s. A lot of people started coming to me for assistance who had attained more money than God or more power than God. They had accomplished that version or that distortion of the American dream, only to have discovered that their health was compromised, their spouse had left them, and their children weren't talking to them. And they would come to me saying, what did I do wrong? I did all the right things, and now everything's a shambles.
Right. Exactly.
So I totally get it. And I just want to underscore for our listeners that this is not an uncommon trap. And ideally, we prevent ourselves from falling into it if we can. And for most of us, because of cultural programming, we only discovered that we fell into the trap after we have paid a price for having fallen into the trap. And it's never too late to get out of that trap.
I just wanted to throw in right now, the standing statistic is 87% of all transactions that fail because the owner sabotaged it. Because when closing gets real, they recognize that they can't imagine living life after ownership. And so they find a way to destroy the deal. And what I really like about what we're talking about today, this balanced business approach through doing all of this work early, is that you get the opportunity as you decentralize yourself, as you separate your own identity from the operation, you get to start to practice life outside of work. And you get to try a few things while you still have the cushion of the business to back up your ego and all of those things, so that you can start to find out, what can I be excited about for the next several decades of my life? And that's something that I get very excited about whenever we talk about working with business owners to be proactive on the exit, because 100% of business owners will exit their business standing up or laying down, right?
Yeah, surely. I always think, I don't know what you guys think about this. I also think there's a generational aspect to this. So I always find it very fascinating studying different age groups. And I think that, so me and my dad, right, I'm probably a cusper. I'm on the upper end of the millennials and the lower end of the Gen Xers. My dad's pure baby boomer. And when you look at baby boomers, I have a lot of respect for baby boomers, right? They have an amazing ability to handle crisis. They're very passionate individuals and they're driven by success. So whether that's their business, whether that's their golf game, whether that's their marriage, they want to find success in what they do. They're also the inventors of the 60-hour work week. So thank you all baby boomers for that, right? Us millennials are probably saying, dude, we'd like to do the 4-day work week versus the 5. So polar opposite in that sense. But nonetheless, I think that there's a sense that you were kind of raised that way in that time, right? They were raised by traditionalists, right? And this is hardworking, passionate for your work. It'll be interesting to see the stuff that we know, this value acceleration stuff that we're talking about on today's show, how it takes to people in the next couple generations. So you have the Gen Xers, call it early 50s through your 40s. Now, if you look at those generations, they are a generation of technology. They believe in working smarter. They believe working smarter, not harder. They actually value their time versus success. They value time as their number one. And they already kind of thrive or strive to have this blend or balance of work and personal lives. So like everything that we've been talking about over the last few minutes of the show, right? This exit planning, this value acceleration gives us that. Then you go into the millennial generation, a couple things stand out. They are a very ambitious generation, but not very framed. And they are horrible financial planners, right? We are a generation that earns to spend. I was just starting the show talking about how I just bought a motor coach, like, right? Like there are people who are like, what are you doing, man? So nonetheless, I think that it would be interesting as we see the next 10 years, this evolution of exit planning, if you will, and how it's taking to people in their 40s, 50s, 30s, and if their generational characteristics are true. Because if they are, I think the people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, early 50s are actually much more attracted to what we're talking about now, because they yearn for that. So I don't know. I think it's fascinating.
What I'll add on that, because as a baby boomer, someone who is part of that generation, I see a lot more increasing numbers of aging baby boomers finally waking up to what the younger generations never had to wake up to. They knew from the get-go. So my generation was the grinder generation. You can only get wealthy through grinding it, through working 120-hour weeks, things like that. And so my generation is waking up in larger numbers to the idea that that was a really faulty script. But I love the distinction that you're creating between, and we don't have to necessarily, I think there's value in delineating the generalities, the trends among the generations.
Sure.
I think that there's even more value in turning that into temperaments, because regardless of generation, there are grinder temperaments, there are indulgence temperaments, and there are integrated purpose lifestyle temperaments.
Sure.
And
100%.
Of course, the whole focus that you're bringing in this episode is give up the grinder, mentality, give up the indulgence mentality, and really step into an integrated purpose lifestyle approach to integrating your business and your life so that your business serves your life rather than you being a slave to the business.
100%. 100%. Well said by the doctor, right? Well said by the doctor, for sure.
Absolutely. And to kind of bring this full circle, you started with this story of a young entrepreneur who exited at 24. And if you look at the last 2 decades, we've had an explosion of young entrepreneurs and new startups, like more than we've seen probably since the Industrial Revolution in scale. And we're going to see a lot more young entrepreneurs exiting and needing a next phase that is more than retirement, that is different than a baby boomer's next act. And so having these conversations and having this mentality already available, ready, practiced, and at their fingertips, I think is going to be extremely powerful. And it's going to, I think, elevate this wave of entrepreneurship to a level that personally I'm very excited about.
Yeah. Before we move to takeaways, there's one other follow-up comment I'd like to make. And I want to then, after that, turn it over to you, Jason, about whether you have a follow-up comment or question for Scott before we move into takeaways. My comment is an add-on to what you were saying, which I think is so spot on, Scott, about the parallel to the old line, which has a lot of wisdom to it, of course, work on your business instead of in your business. Sure. For sure. And you drew a parallel to that having to do with stop living in your life and start working on your life.
Right.
And I love that. Here's my add-on. You may recall the first Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And there's this scene where all hell has broken loose. And all of Indiana Jones's cronies, his pals, are circled around him, huddled around him, panicked out of their minds, saying to Indy, "What do we do, Indy? What do we do, Indy? What do we do?" And Indiana Jones kind of ultimately bursts out into this kind of mock anger, saying, "How should I know? I'm making it up as I go."
Yeah.
And that kind of Indiana Jones approach to life really is out of sequence. My take on stop living in your life and start working on your life is become a conscious, purpose and value-oriented architect of your life so you can then live an Indiana Jones approach to life.
So true, though. I think that, again, it goes back to that kind of purposeful living. It's just, and again, it's so related to business, because this is why owners, I think, sometimes don't even work on their business exit, because everything's just going so well. They have a very successful company. They don't understand that success doesn't necessarily equate directly to the significance. Just because you have a lot of income generation doesn't mean you have a lot of value creation. And same thing, it's like kind of relates into their life, where their day-to-day life is pretty good. And I can tell you, David, not to get down on like a rabbit hole for us and for me at EPI, when we had to make this kind of forced pandemic pivot in April of 2020, it changed literally who I am as a person. And it changed who we are as a company, because we were forced to look inside and say, who are we? What are we made of? And what do we want to do? And Jason probably knows this from kind of being in the community, that in 2020, guys, we were a company that literally did all of its programs in person. Can you imagine? I had to cancel like 3 programs in a row. And in 45 days, we transitioned this business from in-person to virtual learning. And we did so in a way that was successful. But when you paused and looked back and we're about to cheer and pop the bottle of champagne like we've survived the pandemic, you could see everybody just start to deflate. And they were deflated because purpose, core values, mission, all lacking. The sense of camaraderie. But again, maybe another show for another time. But nonetheless, yeah, I would totally agree that there's this sense of this more intentional and deliberate way of living. And I'm sensitive to it, David, because we could talk about it all day, but I can tell you it's a lot harder to figure out. Luckily, at 38 years old, I've been able to figure it out. I think it's always evolving. I can only imagine being a baby boomer trying to investigate this at 65 or 70 and being like, shoot, I've run my business for 35 years. Who am I?
Yeah,
as a baby boomer, this is exactly what I've been helping people with for decades.
Right. It's your work. Right. Exactly right.
That old adage that busy is not a strategy. And yet the world around us continues to keep us so busy. You need a moment of peace, a moment of still in order to start this reflective work. Mine was in the bowels of the engine room of a push boat on the Rhine River, where even if there were people around, you couldn't converse because it was so darn loud. And I was down there for years, and I was down there developing an alternate fuel technology product for a couple years. And that isolation and that stillness that comes out of it was when I had my transformative event. So finding the ability to get a little bit of quiet in this storm of all the busy is a really important key to taking the first step. And COVID did that for a lot of us. COVID brought the whole world to a stop and gave everybody a little bit of isolation. And in some ways, I think the effects of that are going to be good. In other ways, I think that there's a lot of damage that was done too. But getting that peace, getting that moment of still within your business as well as within your life is a very transformative thing.
100%.
Busy is not only not a strategy, it's not a true tactic.
Very true.
Yep. Scott, what we like to do before we sign off is we like to just highlight a key takeaway. What are you taking from this conversation, or what would you like to make sure that our listeners take away? If there's one thing they bring with them after listening to this podcast, what would it be for you?
Shoot, man, we talked about so much good stuff. So I'm going to wing it on the fly here for you guys. And so I would say the first thing that comes to mind, right? We're on the Boosting Business Value podcast, but what we've talked about a lot is this balance and blend of three things. And I think that if I could take away really anything as a business owner, maybe listening in, is that it really true exit planning and true significant companies is what we've just been talking about over the last 30, 45 minutes. It's about this blend of business, personal, and financial. So the value really comes certainly in the business, but value also comes in the personal and personal financial as well. Understanding who you are, aligning a personal financial strategy to it, and then building a business that's highly valuable so that when you do harvest value, you can use it to manage for a lifestyle or a lifetime to come.
I love that.
Love it.
Dr. G?
Right. So the takeaway for me is that I've not really thought about the TBL of us in the corporate social responsibility world since 1999 or so, when that finally started to catch on. There was the triple bottom line of profitability, which is people, profit, planet, right? And what you've really illuminated today, Scott, quite beautifully, I think, is the TBL of you, meaning the TBL of each of us individually, which is that we drive our own personal triple bottom line value through integrating our business, personal, and financial goals. That's the TBL of us. And so that's one of the big takeaways for me. And inside of that, the importance of developing and implementing a decentralized business in which, as the owner, we are the visionary strategist and innovator who can organically focus on what's most interesting to us today, because others in the business are focused on tactical planning and on implementation.
I love it. I love it. And the worst thing when you're in a group of great minds is being the last person to contribute.
I was going to say, Jason, it's a tough spot. I feel like the last guy to go here.
I'll do my very best, but I will say there's a drum that we beat in our community. You hear it a lot as a common thread through the Boosting Business Value podcast. You hear it in the EPI work that they do, but it's a drum that we're almost beating amongst ourselves. And I want to get this rhythm out into the larger world, which is, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you are not doing anyone any favors by staying buried in solving the problems of the business every single day. If you can start to remove yourself, mentor other people, and establish processes and systems within your business such that you are driving the vision and other people are dealing with the tactics, solving the problems, and doing the work, you get an opportunity to practice what your life outside of work feels like, and what you like, what you don't, and what your purpose is. You get to build a business that has durable, impactful value that can fund your life whenever you're ready to have a life after business. And you're caring for the staff within the business who all want to have the pride of contribution and building the great business that they decided to give their time to 60% of their life. is inside work. So they've given that to the business owner. They want to be able to be contributors to it. And so by doing the work, this value acceleration methodology, and thinking about all these things with regard to your own personal gaps, that's not selfish. That's actually the furthest thing from selfishness. It's caring for and trusting in the entire ecosystem. And I heard that come out throughout this dialogue. And I really think it's a point to drive home. And I appreciate it, Scott.
Sure. Thank you, guys. Yeah, it's been great.
Well, awesome. With that, Scott, so excited to have this time with you. It's been a real treat. Love what you and your team are doing. And on behalf of Dr. Gruder and myself, thank you very much. We thank all of you out there for listening. Please click the subscribe button, add your comments, help us shape the future of these dialogues, and look at the transcript as well and take a listen to the EPI podcast. And with all of that said, thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
That's all for this episode of Boosting Business Value. May your new learning result in the smoothest and most profitable exit strategy for your business. With the right knowledge and guidance, the sky's the limit to what you can do. Do not miss an episode by subscribing to the show. And if you want to learn where your business currently stands, we also have free key opportunity assessments. Find all of them at blueskyadvisors.net/podcast. Thank you for joining us. See you on the next one.